Around 11 years ago now, where I started first struggling with anxiety. It happened with some presentations at work, and I'd freak out, thought I'd stuffed them up and couldn't go to work the next day, and instead of ringing up and saying I was struggling with my mental health, I said I had the flu. And it kind of got worse and worse, and then I was actually diagnosed with bipolar, and I found out the hard way where I had actually like a manic episode and ended up in the mental health ward. Yeah, we were super lucky to have Prince Harry and Meghan down at Fluro Friday. That was about 5 years ago now, and they were the best humans, and they were so open, and they sat with us in the anti-bad vibe circle and shared stories around mental health. I remember Prince Harry saying, everyone has mental health just like physical health, and asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strength. And so what happened is it really helped us bring colour to mental health around the world, but it also showed that mental health doesn't discriminate.
On today's episode, Grant Trebilco, the founder of OneWave's, a non-profit surf community raising awareness of mental health. Grant, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I would like to introduce you to our audience so they have a little bit more of a context of who you are. So Grant is a founder of OneWave, a nonprofit surf community raising awareness of mental health with a simple recipe, which is saltwater therapy, surfing, and fluoro. And since launching in March 2013, OneWave has created a global impact, raising awareness and reducing social stigmas around mental health issues through their Fluro Friday Sessions, and has since gone viral, with sessions held at more than 200 beaches across more than 50 countries, from New Zealand to Norway. And OneWave also runs Free the Funk programs in schools and workplaces, which have impacted more than 45,000 people. Welcome.
Thanks so much for the kind intro, I appreciate it.
Well, you're doing amazing things, and I'm always seeking out people that have this desire and capacity to have a positive impact on the world. So I want to know a little bit more about you and what happened in your life so that you decided to create OneWave.
Yeah, so I grew up in New Zealand, grew up by the beach, lucky to grow up surfing with my family, my dad, my brothers, and always had the best support, loved sports, and so I was just known as the happy kid, and always the one where people would say, how are you so happy all the time? And the thing was, I was, but I didn't even know what mental health was. We didn't talk about mental health back at school. We grew up playing rugby in this very macho culture where you just don't talk about your feelings, unless you broke your arm or something and people could see that you're in pain. But it was around 11 years ago now where I started first struggling with anxiety. It happened with some presentations at work, and I'd freak out, thought I'd stuffed them up and couldn't go to work the next day, and instead of ringing up and saying I was struggling with my mental health, I said I had the flu. And it kind of got worse and worse, and then I was actually diagnosed with bipolar 11 years ago, and I found out the hard way where I had actually like a manic episode and ended up in the mental health ward. And that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar, and it was the scariest thing ever because we didn't even talk about mental health back then, and there was a lot of stigma around it. So when I got out of the mental health ward, I was so scared of telling my friends. But the one place I could escape was getting in the ocean and riding waves. And I remember I was living in Sydney at the time. I was working for a tequila company, and it probably wasn't the best place to be working when you're struggling with your mental health, but I could hide it and had the funnest times. But it's the scary thing with mental health, people couldn't see I was struggling, but I had to quit that job and move back home to New Zealand just to recover, learn how to live with bipolar, and the one place I could escape was in the ocean. And for me, I'd surfed all my life, but this was different. OneWave's all it takes. It made me smile again, gave me hope that things could get better, and I wanted to share this recipe of OneWave's all it takes. But surfing was a big part of me learning to live with bipolar and getting the stoke back, but the other thing was just sharing my story and realizing I wasn't alone. I told my best mate out on the surf that I had bipolar, and I thought he'd run the other way, which is crazy, but he just gave me a big hug and said, I'm so sorry you're going through that, how can I help? And I just said, just take me surfing every day. And then every person I told had a story. One of my best friends had anxiety, never told anyone, and another friend opened up about his mental health struggles. I'm like, okay, if this is all it takes, just me sharing my story, then we're going to do this every week. And I decided one Friday at Bondi to paddle out in the Fluro suit, call it Fluro Friday, to try and start some conversations about mental health. And that was the first Fluro Friday, and luckily I was joined by 2 legends the next week, and the next week there was 10 of us, and we've just become this supportive community around the world that's sharing that, you know, secret recipe of saltwater therapy, surfing and Fluro to bring more colour to mental health and get more people riding waves.
Beautiful, beautiful. And there's so many things I want to unpack there one by one. And I guess I want to start by shedding light on bipolar as well, because when we talk about mental health, usually what comes up is anxiety or depression, but very rarely I hear about bipolar, for example. So can you maybe share with the audience that is not so familiar what that actually means in practicality, and how does that come up or manifest?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So bipolar, you can have the lows of depression, which I've gone through, you know, the lowest lows, and you think things aren't going to get better. But if you just focus on, you know, one thing every day to get your hope back and you know, make you smile again, that can help. So it's people who experience depression. So bipolar, you have the depression, and then you can have the mania, which is the high end. And for example, for me, when I was manic and bipolar, on a Friday night, I broke up with a girlfriend of 6 years. By Wednesday, I'd spent all my personal money on bar tabs for at the surf competition for the surf team, even though I had all this free tequila. Thursday, I went into my office and dressed as a tequila farmer, and this is the tequila job, a job that I loved. And I said, you know, over this corporate job, I want to start a charity called Where the Party At. So you're just trying to help people. But you kind of go from being very rational to just all these ideas, and it feels like it's linking together. Everything speeds up. So you'll post so many times on social media. You'll have all these ideas, and you know, what it ended is just me going up too high. So you might have a friend, for example, that's posting a lot on social media, that spends all their personal money. So you're making decisions that you wouldn't usually make. But at the time, you're like, whoa, I'm finally feeling good. So you don't listen to anyone. And so for me, the only way they could slow me down was to put me in the mental health ward. And I've had 2 manic episodes in the 11 years. Some people can be more regular, but yeah, bipolar, when you're on that high end, it really scares me, that end, because that you don't listen to people. And when I explain to people, I'm like, it's like you're on a party bus and it feels like everyone's on that bus with you. But then you wake up the next day and realize it was just you. And so at the time, it feels like everyone's there. You're just, all these ideas are connecting. And then you realize the next day, for me, I woke up and you go from that highest high to the lowest low, because you're like, oh, that wasn't real. It feels so real at the time. So anyone who's going through bipolar, who knows someone, it's just about trying to find the balance in the middle. It's like when you're riding a wave, you don't want to be too high, don't want to be too low. The perfect position is like somewhere in the middle. I think that's like life, because everyone has highs and lows, but with bipolar, the highs can be more extreme and the lows can be like really low.
So what, if any, is the anchor or that voice of reason or that call to the middle that one can follow if they're in that situation?
Yeah, I think for me, a key thing with bipolar that can set it off for me is lack of sleep. If I'm not sleeping, I can go high. If I had too many nights out partying, can set off as well. If I forget to take my medication, I have to take 2 types of medication. Like one protects me from the highs and one lifts me up. It's like a mood stabilizer. So I think it's just finding the thing that keeps you balanced. And for me, that's having good people around me that I can share my story with and know it's okay not to be okay. It's surfing. It's I have this thing called win the morning, win the day. And if I can start the morning with something positive, whether it's like a surf or a swim and a coffee with friends, it's just something positive in the morning can set me up for the day. And I just kind of know there's situations that I shouldn't put myself in, you know, if I do have anxiety, because you can get quite a bit of anxiety, like social situations. It's okay to say no. Like, I'm a yes person, so I've had to realize that, you know, it's okay to say no if you don't feel like going out sometimes, and I really need my time to chill. So yeah, I think it's just, I've keep finding tools for taking care of my mental health, and I'm always learning with bipolar. And my dad has bipolar as well, and I never really knew that or understood that until I really went through it. So talking to someone else who has bipolar has been a big part of me learning to live with it. And I just call myself a bipolar bear now. And I think the first time I really understood it, my family said, do you want to talk to a friend who's had it? And I was like, no, I don't really want to sit to someone and talk to someone else I don't know about bipolar. But I was pretty embarrassed about everything I did when I was manic. Like I quit a job that I loved, broke up with a girlfriend, spent all my money and things. That wasn't usually me, you know, because I'm usually pretty chilled, and kind of sends you up to, you know, that state where you got too much energy. So I sat down and talked with him, and we kind of like laughed at what we'd both done, and just being able to talk to someone who's been through something similar. I guess it's the same with depression, anxiety. Talk to someone you can relate to and realize actually it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something I went through, and now at least I know, having bipolar now, what I've got to deal with and the tools I need to, you know, use to take care of my mental health.
And OneWave is clearly helping massively.
Massive. That was the one thing. Like when I was in New Zealand and I couldn't work for 6 months, and the ocean was a massive thing for helping me, you know, get my stoke back and giving me hope that things can get better. Because when I was in hospital, I went from like, looked like I was, you know, having the best time, doing the tequila job, throwing lots of parties, to being in a mental health ward surrounded by a lot of people that were fighting, that didn't want to be in there. Like 11 years ago, no one really talked about mental health. So I was like, I needed something that, when I wasn't in the ocean, like I had doctors to support me, I had, you know, my family, friends, but I needed something that gave me purpose to get up in the morning, because I wasn't going to work, and I needed something that, you know, could give me hope. And when I started sharing my story, I realized that just by sharing my story, it helped me, because it realized I wasn't alone, but it was helping my friends. They would open up to me, whether it was in the ocean or going for a walk. And I found this thing, I'm like, if you're side by side, like in the car or out in the ocean or going for a walk, it made it, like, created this safer space, and actually brought my friends. I thought it would make us grow further apart, me opening up about bipolar. It's crazy that to think that, but it actually brought us closer together. And so I just decided to, I'm like, how do I share my story? I'm like, I'm not sure how. And my friend gave me ideas to just sit in front of your laptop, you know, and just film your story. And I remember just crying and just like letting it all out, but it was such a good feeling. I just decided to send it to a few friends, rather than just like, it was easier than telling them. And then they came to me and they like started sharing their stories. And I'm like, just by sharing my story and my love of the ocean, like, it gave me hope. But yeah, mate, you can't beat helping people. I think for me, helping people has been the best recipe. It takes the pressure off me, and instead of me being angry about having bipolar and these stupid things I've done, I'm like, okay, this has given me the chance. It's actually changed my life, and it's been really tough, but I would not have met, like, you know, Adam and you, who's introduced me to you, and all these amazing people and shared stories, if it wasn't for those tough times I've been through.
Yeah, and it's so powerful, the power that the authenticity and vulnerability paired has as an impact on the other people. Because, as you said, so many friends that you spoke to later on, it turns out that they have some sort of issues that they're struggling with, and that is the fastest way to bring you closer together. And it's also a cue for the other people that you might not know, which is, I'm sure, the reason why the community has grown so quickly. Strangers can open up.
Definitely.
Because that vulnerability from your side is the cue for them to open up. They're like, okay, well, this person is brave enough to share their pain and their weaknesses and their flaws and their shortcomings. So it's okay for me to have them. And not only have them, but I'm also safe with this person to share that, because they have just shown me by leading by example that I can do that as well.
Yeah, it's so true.
And I'm sensing, I'm kind of putting it all together, and it seems like OneWave has kind of hit that jackpot of the perfect storm, if you will, of the things that can help soothe the malaise of a lot of different types, which is, you have the supportive community.
Yeah.
You have a judgment-free zone to share and you're listened to. You have physical exercise with all the, you know, chemicals that it brings up in your body when you do it. You have a overcoming challenge, which obviously you get every time that you can surf a wave.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like the perfect formula.
It's such a good way to put it. I think that's the key thing is, you know, the exercise. Any exercise always helps my mental health, social connection, and especially the last few years, it's been so tough, and people have realized the importance of social connection, community, Just having people you can, and just turning up where you can just be you. You don't have to pretend, because that's one thing for me. I always thought I was known as a happy person, so I have to pretend that, you know, that I'm always happy. But when I go to OneWave, I can just be me. If I'm struggling, I can, you know, chat to my friends. If I'm feeling good, I can help other people. And we're so lucky to have so many supportive people like Sam, my best mate. He, you know, he's the one who's been involved with OneWave and helped set it up right from the start. And I met him at a bar when I was doing the tequila job. He was managing a nightclub, and it's like, who would have thought these two guys that like met in a bar at a nightclub, this partying scene, you know, would be so passionate about raising awareness of mental health through surfing. And so he came on board. He was a surf instructor, and yeah, he's been there from the start. He runs the OneWave at Bondi, and he's volunteered his time every week for 10 years. And so wow. You meet these people, just the best humans, and like Adam Yu, who ran from Barcelona to Amsterdam, who introduced us. There's just all these amazing people. And I think the big part for us too is like, because mental health was invisible, the Fluro element has been massive for us, because it was such a dark thing, especially so hard to talk about, especially 10 years ago when mental health the awareness wasn't so high. So the Fluro, it makes people happy, like when you see a rainbow, but it's the least thing they expect to see, because usually you're wearing like your dark colored wetsuit. So when they'd see us walking down the street, you know, people would be like, what, you know, why are you dressed up? And they'd expect you to say, oh, you've just been on still partying or something. But when you said raise awareness of mental health, they stop. And like you said, like I've had chats to complete strangers in the surf or on the street that they just go quiet, and because they don't expect you to say raise awareness of mental health, and they're like, then start sharing their personal stories. Like I've had, you know, people share, they haven't even told their friends they've got depression and shared out in the surf, because when you open up and be vulnerable, it just shows others that they don't have to go through it alone. And that's been massive for us. I think it's that combination of like a lighthearted way of starting a conversation about mental health, but then it brings up a really real conversation.
Yeah.
And it's easier because we have the anti-bad vibe circle before we go for a surf. So like you said, that's creating a safer space. And you can just sit there and listen, or you can share what are your tips for freeing the funk or taking care of your mental health. We share there, you know, like how to support someone going through mental health challenges. And so we do that, which is a mental health check-in before the surf. And that's a really nice way of introducing new people to the community as well. And I guess the key thing is just giving people a chance to open up if they are doing it tough. And then we get in the ocean and have a surf, or get some saltwater therapy, go for a swim, and then always coffee after. Nice. So it's that massive like community of like, go down, meet new crew, have the chance to open up, you know, giving people hugs if they need support, and getting salty, and then the coffee after is where the chats happen.
Nice.
As well.
It's amazing. I love that. And I guess another thing that we didn't mention is just the healing properties of nature itself, and being in
Definitely.
nature. That is a huge one, and something that, you know, here you guys are really blessed that you're so close to the beach, but you know, in big cities that aren't necessarily, except for parks, exposed to nature at all, it's even more challenging. So yeah, that's a very, very big one. And you know, sometimes we talk about you know, some of the hacks that you can do living in a city. And so there's all the grounding, like the science of grounding, how important it is to be in connection with earth, with sand, with, you know, water. So you guys are really nailing it.
Yeah, we've been super lucky. And I think that even during COVID, people realized even more the importance of like going out for a run, and like how much you miss that connection with people now. So I feel like the amount of community groups that I've seen around the world, and we had some Fluro Fridays in London too, down by the Thames. Yeah, they'll go down there, just do a yoga, like without the swims, you wouldn't swim in the Thames, but they'd do yoga. And I think it was just that different ways of connecting. We've had some groups that do like Fluro runs, and we do Fluro Fridays in schools as well, for schools that can't make it to the beach. So I think that's, like you said, just something, getting out in nature has a massive benefit for taking care of your mental health. And if you can do that with friends, like even better, and have a chat at the sound. I feel like meet new people for sure. And it's just easy to chat about mental health when you're out in nature, side by side.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the anti-bad vibe circle, I was thinking about that. Does that mean that people can't share what's kind of on their heart and what's weighing them down? Is there only that positive twist on it, kind of what you do about it, or can people also share their stories and like what's
It's a good question actually, yeah, because anti-bad vibes, because what it kind of means is that anything you're going through, you're open to share. There's like no bad vibes in that circle, whatever you want to share. But you could come across like that there's actually you can't share the bad stuff, which is actually a good way. Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically the aim of that circle is that you can share anything.
Yeah.
So we want people to open up if they're doing it tough. So we might ask, for example, like, how's your headspace today? Or like, how's your stoke factor out of 10, like from 1 to 10?
Stoke factor.
Yeah. And it's like, that's something me and my mates used to, because guys are not as good about talking about mental health. So we might just like in a WhatsApp group, hey, how's your stoke factor out of 10? If it's below 6, we're like, okay, sorry, doing it a bit tough. Like, how can I help lift your stoke factor? Just like a more casual way of talking about mental health. And so in that circle, we might share Free the Funk tips, but yeah, anything goes. But that's actually a really good question. I haven't actually thought about that. It came from like, there's this anti-bad vibe shield, was that one of these artists who's a surfer created, and it's like all fluoro colors. So that was kind of where the idea came from. Just like, yeah, we're here to support, and it's like good vibes crew.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love that. I mean, I imagine that you can't share anything, but I just wanted to make sure.
It's a good question.
And so obviously we're touching upon how the community is a driving force of this change for good. So what do you think is at the heart of growing community, beautiful community like yours?
Yeah, I think it's people. I think the importance of community is now more than ever over the last few years since COVID. Like, so many like amazing communities have started. I think it's like connecting people, with that have similar passions. And I think what's happened with OneWave is that it's attracted people, like the kindest people who are there to support people, but also, they've been vulnerable and they've shared their stories, and they have similar passions around, they love the ocean, they're very passionate about mental health, and there's something about when you turn up in Fluro, share your stories around mental health, it turns like strangers to best mates in minutes. And I think whether it's a rugby community or a running community that meets up in London, or a yoga community, you go there and there's people that are strangers become best mates. Like, sometimes you can actually go to a yoga class though and not talk to someone, but if you create a regular event where you get the chance to actually chat and meet people, like if you do a yoga instructor training or something, then that's when you go from strangers to best mates. And you share stories, and I feel like, I think if everyone can have I think everyone has different communities, that they can be like a book club, or a music community, dance community, and I think communities are the best things ever. They make you happy, and I think they help you get through the tough times because you can just show up. Yeah. And it's something you love doing.
Yeah, and you're right. It's also about that consistency. If you can create a space where people know they can keep coming back all the time, that in of itself creates that feeling of safety and roots. And I'm saying that from a perspective of a person that has, changed countries 3 times, So every time after 5-6 years, you have your friends there, you have your life, and then you move. And then it's all over from scratch, right? So, I can imagine that a lot of people that are joining the community also are not necessarily from there. So an added benefit to that is that they have, a home, like a family, something that they feel like they belong to, even though they're not from there.
It's so true. And I think that, like you said, it connects people. Like, you make new friends that have got similar values, but also it's that consistency of, we've had a Fluro Friday down the beach every Friday now at 6:30 a.m. in the morning for 10.5 years. Apart from during COVID, we moved it online. But I guess the thing, it's the community. I think the big thing is it's there whenever you need it. Some people come down every week, but there was a guy last week I hadn't seen for 2 years, and he just popped up down the stairs. He's like, "Oh, did you miss me?" I'm like, "Yeah, we missed you." And it's like, he just knew we were going to be there. He didn't even have to message the day before. And I think that's the big thing about communities. They're there when you need them. But there's some people that came down the first 5 years and they met their friends through that. And, they've got help with their mental health challenges, and they've got crew to surf with. They don't come down anymore. But when we have our annual birthday event every year, we do a World Fluro Wave, they'll come back down because it's their community. They're a massive part of it, but they don't need the weekly support. But it's still a massive part of the community. So I think that's the thing. It's always there whenever you need it.
That's powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more about Free the Funk.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, Free the Funk is I guess when you're going through mental health challenges, I get a lot of head noise. And when I've got anxiety, I get a lot of self-doubt. and things that can be easy for me, like doing a presentation at work, which is always hard, but when I've got anxiety, it's like the scariest thing ever. Or just, I go from ordering a coffee's easy, and you know, to when I've got anxiety, it's really hard to go and order a coffee, because I've got all these conversations going on in my head saying, oh, people are, you know, like judging me, or I'm saying something stupid. And so freeing the funk is like, how do I get rid of that head noise? Or, you know, if I'm feeling a bit depressed, what can I do to, you know, help get the stoke back or make me smile again? So it's kind of like just getting rid of that head noise. And so for me, to free the funk might be chatting to a friend. I know if I can just say, hey, look, tell a friend I've got anxiety, it helps kind of like release that feeling a bit from my chest. Or surfing, you know, OneWave's all it takes to free the funk for me. Or like just getting in the ocean and having a swim helps me free the funk. So yeah, we have free the funk programs in schools, so high schools and primary schools. And when we talk to the kids, we just say, you know, what are, you know, your tips for freeing the funk, or what are your tips for taking care of your mental health?
I really like how you formulated that.
It's like,
I think it resonates with a lot of people that maybe normally wouldn't, with, you know, your typical description of like mental health. So that's why I always think that various messengers are needed for the same message.
Yeah.
You know, for example, when I decided that I really want to do coaching, right? I also had, you know, a lot of doubts. I was like, well, I mean, there's enough coaches out there, and, you know, other people can do it. Like, there's Tony Robbins. Why would somebody come to me if there's Tony Robbins, right? But then I understood that actually the world is a very big place, and there's a lot of people in the world, and each person needs their own messenger.
Definitely.
And a different wording from a different person in a different time in a different world with a different accent is going to come across just as it needs to for the person that's listening to. So the more messengers, the better.
Yeah,
for all the good messages.
It's so true. Thank you. Because that's what we're thinking too. We're like, how mental health was such, you know, a dark thing to talk about. And so we had the Fluro, which was, you know, starting that conversation about mental health and making it a bit lighter. But we're like, we need some like fun kind of way to get people opening up in a more positive way. So that was where the Free the Funk were like, when you're in a bit of a funk where there's a bit of a positive to it, and when you think of funk, but also being in a funk is when you're just not feeling yourself. You know, you might have a bit of anxiety, you might be stressed, you might be going through depression, but it's like, how do you free that funk and clear it, get it out of your head? And I think that was it helped us because it was a bit more fun, but we were just like, how do we get people talking about something that's really hard? And if you get someone at schools to say, you know, like, they want to share about mental health challenges they've faced, then not many people put their hands up. But if you can ask 5 to 6 year olds, how do you free the funk? Or like, what's your happy place? And they all put their hand up and say like, yeah, it's hanging out with my mates, it's riding my bikes, it's dancing. So it's just, we've always found like, what's the challenge we're trying to solve? And it's like getting people talking about their mental health, and then getting them in the ocean, and then helping them find the right professional support. Because then we can connect, that we can start the conversation on the beach in the anti-bad vibes circle or in the ocean. And you need your community support, you need your family, friends, but you also need the professional support. So anyone that's doing it tough, we'll try and connect them up with, you know, with its local doctors that specialize in mental health, or psychologists. And so, yeah, that's always been our big thing, is like, okay, how do we start the conversation? But we're not doctors or psychologists that run the Fluro Friday. We have, lucky we have volunteers that run the Fluro Friday events at the beaches. So we try and connect people up with the professional support.
That's really powerful. And I like that there's complete formula to that. So there's an aftercare for people that really need it as well. That's professional.
Oh, thank you.
I was thinking, what is kind of the impact that you've obviously had a lot of publicity over the years, and you had, you know, Prince Harry and Meghan visit you as well and participate in OneWave. So what is the impact that sort of publicity has had on the movement?
Yeah, we were super lucky to have Prince Harry and Meghan down at Fluro Friday. That was about 5 years ago now, and they were the best humans, and they were so open, and they sat with us in the anti-bad vibe circle and shared stories around mental health. I remember Prince Harry saying, you know, everyone has mental health just like physical health, and, you know, asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strength. And what happened after that day, because there was so much media coverage, there's all these different news channels, you know, not just Australia, but, you know, from the UK and around the world. We had new Fluro Fridays starting in the UK after that, like Polzeth. We had like Sidmouth in the UK. We had Bracklesham Bay. We had Fluro Friday starting in Mexico because
Wow.
they'd seen it on the news. And so what happened is it really helped us bring colour to mental health around the world. But it also showed that mental health doesn't discriminate. You know, it showed that you can be a royal and still go through mental health challenges, you know. And I think that showed them sitting, we're a very grassroots charity, you know, like I'm lucky to work for OneWave part-time, but everyone else is volunteers. And so for them to spend that much time, they sat there, you know, on the beach, they were there an hour with us that morning, and yet help bring more colour to mental health around the world and let people know they don't have to go through it alone. And yeah, that had a massive impact for us and for anyone going through mental health challenges.
And how have you seen, you mentioned that it was very stigmatized, the whole mental health issue topic when you started. How have you seen things change over the years? And if you compare now to then, how is it?
Yeah, so I think the stigma, when we first started 11 years ago, not many people were talking about mental health then. I hadn't talked to many of my friends at all about having bipolar. And, you know, a lot of people, I didn't know many people would talk to a psychologist, but I feel like now the awareness around mental health, especially since COVID, because it was the first time we've all gone through something together around the world, I think a lot more people started opening up around mental health. So I think awareness is up, but it's really still... One thing that's scary is, you know, we lose 9 people a day to suicide in Australia. When we started, it was around 7. So the amount of people we're losing, it's the biggest killer of young people in Australia, you know, more than road accidents. So while awareness is up, we're still losing more people than ever. It's really hard to get the right professional support. It took me countless doctors to find a good one. Psychologists, psychiatrists, it can take 2 to 3 months to get in to see one. And then if they're not right,
Wow.
and up to like really expensive. So I think it's still a shortage of mental health professionals, and it's still hard for people to find the right support. So it might take people a year to open up about their mental health, and then they don't find the right support, you know, and we lose people because of that. So I feel like awareness is up, but we're losing more people than we did, you know, 10 years ago when we started. So obviously life has become stressful. There's all social media pressures and stuff, but yeah, like for me, and that's why like when I get up every morning, I'm still so passionate about, you know, working on OneWave and raising awareness of mental health in the schools, because I'm like, if we can start the awareness at the young age, like we started running school programs at high schools. So in Australia, that's like really like 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds. But then we got a chance to do a primary school because I thought they might be a bit young, but in the primary schools we lighten the conversation, talk about how you're feeling in terms of the weather, like are you feeling sunny, are you feeling cloudy? And if you're feeling cloudy, you're in a little bit of a funk, like what's your happy place? Like how can you make yourself feel sunny again? And so when you've got these 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds, if you ask them like, you know, how do you take care of your mental health? You'll have like the whole assembly, 300-400 kids put up their hand. You literally got to like, okay, we'll save some of those for after. If you do it at a high school, literally like you might get 10 hands go up. So my big thing is the awareness is up, but people still afraid to put their hand up in front of their mates and say they're struggling. You know, like people want to fit in, and social media looks like everyone's living the dream. And I think there are positives of social media in terms of like podcasts that are sharing stories around mental health and people being vulnerable on social media, but it still puts a lot of pressure on young people. So I feel like, yeah, awareness is up, but there's so much pressures these days. So there's so much more for us to do. But so the amazing thing is there is so much more positive mental health charities out there these days helping people. There's so much more people, you know, well-known people sharing their stories online, being vulnerable, which is helping so many people too.
Absolutely. And I'm sensing a lot of purpose in kind of everything that you do. If you had to define what your purpose was, what would you say it is?
I'd say my purpose, so when I used to work, so my background is marketing, and I'd always do these volunteer charity days, but I'd never really found the one that, you know, made me want to get up every day, and that's what I thought about. And for me, I've realized is helping people. I've always loved helping people, and I think, you know, I'm lucky to have so many kind people in my life. And also when I go to Bali, like we chatted about earlier, like they're the kindest people ever. And I think I love helping people. I love lifting people up. And it took me going through some really hard times to work out what my purpose is. But yeah, like I love helping people and sharing my story. It's, you know, allowed others to open up, but it's helped me because I've realized like I'm not alone. And, you know, like sharing my story, yeah, it's given me so much hope. And I guess I could have been angry. I think if I hadn't turned it around and, you know, like focused on starting OneWave, I could have been angry, you know, and just been like, damn, like I lost a job that I loved, you know, I've got bipolar, like, you know, why me? But now that I've turned it around to try and help people, it's given me a purpose, and it's made a positive of something that's really tough. And look, I still struggle with my mental health, and there's times when I'm like, bipolar, this sucks, but you know, it's helped me a lot because I love helping people, and it's the best thing ever when you know, get to share a story with someone and they, you know, like they open up to you and you can go surfing, ride waves. I think like riding waves and chatting to your mates can honestly change your life, and I feel lucky that I get to do that pretty much every day.
It's really, really powerful, and it reminds me of this old age wise lesson, I guess, which is if you're in a funk, if you're stuck and you're not happy and you don't know what to do, the best thing you can do is shift your attention and help someone.
Definitely.
And it might be a little bit counterintuitive to some people that, you know, have not experienced it or have never heard of this, because they're like, well, but I'm in trouble. Like, I need help. Why? What do you mean? I don't even have the reserves to like help someone else. But actually, you really do. And if you try, then you all of a sudden you're helping somebody else. That in itself is an action, and there's a tangible proof that actually you can do it. You have energy, you have power, and you have impact. And all of a sudden, you're in a completely different situation than you were just before, when you were stuck and you were overthinking and ruminating on why everything is bad for you. And all of a sudden, there you are. You see a person that's literally better off because of you. Changes everything, changes the energy completely.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. And I remember when I like first thought about doing OneWave, like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to do this yet. Like maybe I should. And I think the key thing for me is focusing time at the start to take care of me, because I'd always tried to, I've been people pleaser, trying to make everyone happy. I'm like, I need to get my mental health right, and then I can focus on helping others. I remember when I first like sent that video out, and my friend came to me and shared his story about, you know, going through mental health challenges. Like, whoa, it felt so good. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this, and you know, I'm sure there'll be people that, you know, like don't share or that haven't been through anything, but I'm like, I found out that everyone's either gone through something themselves, mental health challenges, or they know someone who has.
Yeah.
And so by connecting and just being vulnerable, I'm like, whoa. So one thing I thought was a weakness, because I grew up in New Zealand, like where you don't talk about your feelings. I realized that actually, like, yeah, it felt good to be vulnerable, and it felt good to cry. I remember like I hadn't cried for so long, and I remember just filming myself in front of that camera. I'm like, let out all these years of just like building up this, you know, like these mental health challenges that I didn't even know what they were. I just thought that was what I was feeling, you know, and it felt good just to like let it out.
Yeah, it's the most incredible connector.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a, you know, bridge that connects you to the other person. It's beautiful. And I'm wondering, with all these years that you've been doing OneWave, and you know, you've been in the anti-bad vibe circle,
Yeah.
you must have learned so many incredible things about people, about humanity in general. So can you share some of the lessons or notions or revelations that have stuck with you, that you've learned about people over this decade?
Yeah, for sure. Like some of the stories that I can relate to. So there's Cedric's 86, and we met him. He cleans the beach like every morning, and so we met him now. It would have been 7 years ago. I was walking down. I was living just down the street here in North Bondi. I was walking down in my Fluro kit, as we do every Friday. You get a few people stopping, like asking, "Why are you dressed up?" And he asked me, and I told him. He's like, "Oh, you know, I'd love to come down." I'm like, "Okay, here you go. Like, have a Fluro beanie." And so he walked with us, and has not missed a Fluro Friday for the last 7 years. He comes down, he reads his favorite quotes. And so I've learned that, you know, like if you be vulnerable, put yourself out there, you'll meet the similar people that are the most kindest humans. So I think it's about having, for him, he brings down his favorite quotes every week. So it's about finding those people that, you know, that they're there for people no matter what. They're the kindest human, but also like, I think if you find similar people and they go from like strangers to best friends in minutes because you're vulnerable. And so, for example, like Cedric, I've learned that, you know, people need purpose. So for him, part of his purpose is like being around young people, you know, at the Fluro Friday, bringing down his quotes. So it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are, what background you're from. When you sit in that anti-bad vibe circle, everyone's the same. and you can just be you. And so I think that's the amazing thing about the people I've met from just being vulnerable. I've also found that, like, yeah, everyone's going through a battle you know nothing about. And I think it's just about creating a space that giving people a chance to open up. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned sitting in the anti-bad vibe circle too. It's just like providing a space for people to either share or just listen or just be there. And I think I've also learned the importance of, it's always the hardest question I get, how to support someone going through a mental health challenge. And I've learned from everyone that sat in those anti-bad vibe circle, either at Bondi or at different beaches that I've been to, it's just really about being there. Just listening, giving people a hug, just acknowledging and saying, I'm sorry you're going through that. That must be really tough. And just asking how you can support them. So I think for me, I've met the kindest humans going through OneWave. I've found that people have so much time for people. It's just about finding, you know, the right purpose and creating a space for them to be there for everyone. And I've found that, yeah, the power of the ocean and fluoro and bringing color to mental health. Yeah, I've met the best people ever. So I've learned so much about, you know, how amazing humans are. And I've learned a lot about being grateful and gratitude. And I'm really grateful for all the amazing people that are part of the OneWave community that I never would have met before if I hadn't gone through those struggles. So yeah, there's so many good people out there. It's just finding a way to kind of connect and meet them.
To attract them and to connect with them. Yeah, you're right. And as we said, vulnerability is one of the quickest ways to do that, for sure. Yeah,
and there's like one of a story, there's Dave, he travels used to travel 2.5 hours on a train from out West Sydney to Fluro Friday in his pink suit. And then he'd come down to Fluro Friday, shoot photos, and then go to work afterwards, you know, and edit the photos and send them through. So there's people that'll just give so much time for the community when they're so passionate about it. And to hear some of the stories when I'm in the anti-bad vibe circle, I think the power is just seeing people when they realize that they don't have to go through it alone. That's been a massive thing for me. It's just like, and also seeing the community support each other. Like, I think a big thing for Learn is like, how can you provide a community that's about helping people help people?
Yeah.
And like you said, the power of helping people. So OneWave is help people, and then we can support them, but then they help others by sharing that recipe.
That's a domino effect that we want to see, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm very fascinated always and amazed by seeing how different people turn their adversities into opportunities, into beautiful things. So I know it's very hard when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, to see the light at the end of the tunnel, or to even more to say, to see an opportunity in that. But if you had to share what you thought could be at least a hint, if not, well, there is no formula, but like a hint that somebody could do or think of in those moments when they're in the thick, to kind of shift that perspective of what's happening, that it could actually be something for good, what would you say?
Definitely. I think the biggest lesson I've learned is when we're thinking about starting OneWave, I wasn't really sure how to start it. And I didn't think I'd had time. So I'm like, I need to go back to getting a job and making some money again and stuff. And I talked to a friend who had started like a mental health community in New Zealand. He said the biggest thing is just getting started. And I was like, oh, what if it doesn't work? You know, like, because obviously I'd gone through those challenges with bipolar and doing things that, you know, like I wouldn't usually do. And I was like, oh, what if it doesn't work? And he's just like, just start it. Just set up an Instagram and just start it. So I was like, okay, yep. I set up the Instagram, and then I was surprised that so many people were like interested in what it was. And then I was like, okay, but we need to get more people in the ocean. How do we do that? And I was like, if I surf in my normal wetsuit, people aren't going to ask questions like about that, won't raise awareness of my mental health. And then the night before, I thought, okay, well, this is the thing with bipolar, you come up with quite a lot of ideas. Sometimes they work, sometimes not. And I was like, I've never surfed in a fluoro suit before. Maybe tomorrow I'll just paddle out in a fluoro suit. And so I literally, instead of like overthinking it, like sometimes I overthink about everything, I was like, okay, I'm just going to paddle out. And that's the first Fluro Friday, and we haven't missed a week since, because I found there's so many other people that care about raising awareness of mental health in the ocean. So I'd say to anyone, like, if they've got that idea, and everyone has amazing ideas in them, because everyone has a purpose. It's just about uncovering what that is. It's one thing that you love and that you can't stop thinking about, and you can start on the side of your job. So I think the key thing is just get started. Don't even worry about what people think. Think about what's the best that could happen. Don't think about what's the worst that could happen. Think about what's the best. And, you know, like I started it on the side of my full-time job, and I remember we were like 3 or 4 years in, and I'm like, someone said to me, look, you should try and go all into this to see what you can do. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can give up work. And they said, well, you know, just find a job that still gives you the flexibility. So I decided to, I was driving Uber in the mornings and at nights for a year, and that allowed me to work on OneWave all day during the day. And so now I do part-time OneWave, and I do my marketing freelance job a couple of days a week. So if you've been thinking you're not sure if the idea will work, just think about what the best thing that'll happen. Also, get someone on board, you know, that's got the same passion as you, the same purpose. If you need the support, set up a social media page or set up a podcast. Just get it started. Start telling a few people, and you'll be surprised at how the feedback gets. And you always have setbacks. You know, there's been times when we've run out of funds for OneWave, but you know, the passion gets you through. And I think if you just keep at it, you'll have those days. You have like the best days, like you go to run a school program, you meet these awesome kids, and you'll have days where you go into a corporate program and you've got anxiety and it's really, really hard, but you get through it. So I think for me, the key tip is like, if you've been thinking about something, just get started. You know, what's the best that could happen, and connect with people that have got similar passions, and don't let anyone tell you it's a bad idea. It's best to work it out yourself, you know, just have it and wing it. Like, you don't have to, sometimes you can work so long having a plan. The best thing is just to get it started, because these days we're super lucky. Like, social media's been amazing that, you know, a lot of the new beaches that have started Fluro Fridays have seen the photos on social media and then got in contact with us. So yeah, just get it started, and you know, don't worry too much about what people think, because they're the wrong people. Just focus on the good people that support you, you know, that lift you up.
It's always about what you focus on. I think about it so often that, you know, you're not meant to be liked by everyone.
Totally.
You're not meant to be, you know, some sort of a person, super god that is literally liked by 8 billion people. That's impossible. That's a very unrealistic expectation. So if you think about it like that, logically, it's like, okay, so there's factually going to people that like me and that don't like me, and that is okay. That is the fact of life, right? So then is the question, what do I proactively choose to focus on? Is it the few? And statistically, it's fewer people that don't like us than what like us.
Totally.
Because naturally we gravitate and stick with the people that like us. So it's also a reality. So do you proactively choose to focus on those few people that dislike you? Or do you focus on the bunch of people that like you? And that is something that we can't control. It is hard, of course, but we can't control that.
Definitely.
I think about that very often.
It's so true. And it's just like focus on what you can control. Because that morning, one the voice in my head was going when I ran down for that Fluro surf, was like, people are going to think I'm manic again. Like, I don't want to end up in the mental health ward. But the other side was going, like, I actually don't care what people think today, and this feels good. I haven't got anxiety. I want to start conversations about mental health. And I was so passionate about, you know, helping people. I wasn't sure there'd be support, and there was one guy that opened up to me in the surf that a lot of people laughed at me, but I was like, I actually don't care what they think. There was one guy that opened up to me in the surf that first Fluro Friday. I never met him before. You know, we gave each other a hug, and he shared his story. He would have been mid-50s about having depression that he hadn't told anyone before. I'm like, if this is what it takes, then we're doing this every week. So I just chucked it on Instagram. Next week, we're doing a Fluro Friday for mental health. And then like 2 people I'd never met came down. I remember like eventually Adam that came down in the first year, and all this new crew. I'm like, so don't worry too much about what people think. Just worry about the good people that lift you up.
Yeah, amen to that. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, inspiring, energizing, and I hope that everyone listening and watching are going to feel the same. And check out OneWave, guys.
Thanks so much for everything you do, and I really appreciate the support.
Thank you.
So great to chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello friends, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone. I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions as to what guests you would like to see on the show next. See you next week.